So I'm gonna try to keep it short, but like it's as Mark said, like there's a lot of things to talk about when you're talking about use query and use mutation and backend and stuff like that. So let's see. So again, hi, my name is Wes. I am a staff software engineer on Quark. The history of the company is basically it wants to uncork as a model like the potential of every company. So people that are not software developers can create applications from enterprise like health insurances, financial institutions, and etc. But then uncork with the what's the correct one? Like it was already taken on .com, and then the CEO took the other option. And yeah, like this is my Twitter, __Wes Souza. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about tRPC, which is a library that connects the backend and the front end using React. I mean, you can use React, but it uses, it also works with vanilla. And the motto of them, like this is not my tagline, move fast and break nothing, is their tagline. So the ingredients are, you need one TypeScript front-end code base, one TypeScript back-end code base, and semicolons to taste. I like them, some people don't. I don't know, maybe it's like the cilantro thing. So before tRPC, let's talk a little bit about RPC. So according to like as Siri says, according to Wikipedia, a remote procedure call, and this is very simplified, is when a computer program causes a procedure to execute on another computer without the programmer explicitly coding the details for the remote interaction. And I would say it's not like any programmer, but like specifically every programmer on the project, because someone will have to code that part. And some languages have that out of the box, so it's way faster. TypeScript, JavaScript doesn't. So we do it ourselves, and that's more or less what tRPC did. As I'm saying now, tRPC is a TypeScript library that allows programmers to define routes on a web server and call them on a client while providing type safety on both ends automatically. I think that's like the gist of it. Comparing it to other options, but like everything is like so large that it's hard to compare individually. Because like REST will be around forever. It's basically HTTP. And you describe REST using OpenAPI. This is a situation where your front end and your backend are in different repositories, different teams. They don't talk to each other all the time. They only like meet when things break or when they're building new features. And like changes happen in isolation. There is code generation for type safety with OpenAPI generator. I tried it a couple of years ago. It sucked, so I don't know if it got better, but it's not ideal. And it uses HTTP semantics. And here's the joke: what is post? Is it create or update? I don't remember. So also doesn't declare WebSockets. So you can use it, you can describe it as one of the routes on your OpenAPI, but it's not officially supported. And I saw like an issue from 2015, and it's still open. And the other option, which is much nicer than REST in my opinion, but for different reasons, would be GraphQL. Same situation in front end and back end, can be different teams, can be different, it can be Elixir, it can be Go, it doesn't need to be TypeScript. But it has a contract that both the backend and the front end have to respect, which means that if you want to change it, you have to first change the contract and then change the backend and then change the front, which means that you require a conversation and an alignment that allows the teams to communicate and then go their own ways to fulfill the contract. I've never used GraphQL code generator. I assume it's good because it's more modern. Like GraphQL is used on Facebook, etc. So it must be decent. Although, like when you think about GraphQL, a required field is the exception, and not in TypeScript or Flow where the null is the exception. So it's kind of like quirky. Everything is used as post by default. So you lose cache you lose a lot of things if you don't add layers on top of layers on top of layers of something that changes the way that GraphQL works internally, or like something that you cache on your application the same way that that reactquery does, but you have to do it forever. And it supports subscriptions, which is the way to get sockets and notifications from when things change on the backend. So tRPC is basically when you control everything. So you have the front end and the back end written in TypeScript, hopefully on the same code base, and mostly working from the same team, or like very close by teams. Changes that happen on the back end immediately affect the front end code, and it's not just because the code is using the same type definitions, is the inferring goes all the way through the code that is when you're using the queries. And the creators were very wise when they wrote this, because mutations use post, but queries use get. So it's basically an escaped stringified JSON on the query string. Obviously won't fit much, but that's good. And also a funny tidbit: the get and post, like the mutations in queries, are not different. It's just like you call a query, and mutation a mutation. They can, like, one can do whatever the other wants. It's not enforced. It's just semantics. And it also supports subscriptions, but I'm not going to get into that. So time for a demo also, I think. No, time for a demo. Now is the time that I need to get my to-do list and talk about what I'm going to do, and then show a little bit of things that are going to show how TypeScript tRPC works and how it connects to the client. By the way, I didn't know that Mark was going to talk about useQuery. It was a very happy coincidence, because this uses reactquery with React out of the box. I also didn't know that when I said that I wanted to talk about tRPC. So a lot of code, like both those things are very hot today. So let's say we want to create an application that is going to describe which color is the most preferred about whoever wants to run this application. This is the current state of it. It doesn't work. There's no backend. It's just generating random data, and 20% of the time it will fail with an error. So this is the application that we're building. It's React. I'm using Vite, but that's not relevant. And I'm also using Vercel, which is basically a nicer way of doing backend if you don't want to think too much about hosting things. So let's talk a little bit about the backend. So on the backend, I'm using Vercel. So there is an API folder, a tRPC folder, and then inside of the folder there's a tRPC route. This route is like a catch route, so it's going to get everything that goes on /API/tRPC/anything, and then tRPC is going to get the reference for that. tRPC doesn't have a handler for Vercel, but it does have one for Next, which is weirdly the same thing. They're the same company, so like Next uses a lot of Vercel technology, so it works. But I'm not using Next.js here. This create context is not necessary. You just need to describe a router, and then here's the router. It's just like .router. So let's go over creating our first route. So we need to get the votes, right? So it's a query. Then I describe what's the path, get votes. The second parameter is an object that has a bunch of options. One of the options is very similar to GraphQL's terminology, which is the resolve. The resolve gets an input, which is whatever you pass from the call. I'm not getting anything, so it doesn't need anything. And it's an asynchronous function, but the function that I'm calling is already asynchronous, so I'm just going to return it. And I'm going to return a function that is called getVotes. Oops. Where is it? Database. Where's your function? Get callers, not get votes. Apologies for the live forgetfulness. So I'm going to build a get colors. Get colors is already an asynchronous function, so it's just going to pass through. Don't need to make it async. Doesn't have a parameter. And by the way, I'm using a Redis service that already has data within it for all the colors, and it maps the votes into the list that I have internally, color by color. And then there's a mutation that I didn't know that, but like Redis has a way of incrementing by one, or like by a number. So it increments the votes on that particular color. So get colors is written. That's it. Like I don't need to, like get colors doesn't need to know about the request, the response. It's just like it returns whatever it wants, which is a promise of an array of this. And then on the front end, I have my application. So this is how you connect both things. You have a React query, you have the tRPC that you create on a function somewhere in your code that has a create query, React query with hooks, which is basically the thing that is going to expose a React query instance. And then here the client, you're going to say, I'll create the client on this URL. This is where you're going to put like your HTTPS, whatever. And you connect that, and you put your code here. So let's go to the code that needs to read from the backend. So this is the fake data that I use. It's basically like it fails if the random is like this. The colors are a map with random data, and then I have two states. So everything that I'm getting here, I'm going to get from the data. So what I can do is const colors equals, and then I'm getting from tRPC, which is the files that I created on Github. It's going to have a use query, the same way that React query had. And then here, I don't know exactly why, but you put it in brackets. And this is going to change. So this is version 9. On version 10, it's a little bit different. And then I already get my get colors function here. I don't need to think about it. And it already knows that it doesn't take parameters. It would take parameters here. And that's pretty much the colors. Now I need to get the other information. So like it's is fetching. And I'm using is fetching because I want it to load not. It's complicated. Like loading for React query only is a state only when it's loaded the first time. If it's reloading, it's not is loading. It's fetching. Is fetching catches both situations. And then I get is error. I get it from colors. I could have get that from yeah, I definitely can. I could get that from the status. Then I remove the fake information. I remove the satisfetching from my fake mutation, and I have an error because I should be neat because ESLint wants that. So because I'm using Vite, it basically already reloaded, and this is the backend. If you go to the application, sorry. If you go to the inspector, you can see get colors is being called. Here, like the parameters nothing, and then you get the information with the colors, and you can see like if you go to back and forth, React query will will refresh the information. So that's out of the box. Gonna update your votes. Another thing that you need to do is mutate. So a mutation back in the router is a dot mutation. Same thing, takes a parameter, let's call it vote. Like this is the route for the mutation. And then it takes a resolve. And then, well, I need to give it an input, which is the color I'm voting for. And I need to configure that. So it has this very interesting input and output validation where it uses a bunch of options. One of them is Zod, or you can use your own. But you can use Zod, for example. So I want my input to be validated as a string. And it's not nullable, it's just a string. As I save this, input is a string. So now I can just return vote, which is from the database, takes a caller ID, which is the input, and that's done. I've done my backend for voting, although you've seen the DB has a little more functions, but that's besides the point. So let's do the mutation. Vote. Let's do, what is it? Mutate. I'm going to use mutate this thing, so I'm going to do the way that I rehearsed. tRPC dot use mutation. It's the same, although this one you can do just one path, but you can do just vote. And you can see here, if I do, I have a vote mutation from reactquery. Now here is where, this is something that I just learned I didn't need to do. I could get the loading state from the mutation. So I'm creating a lock to prevent you from clicking multiple times. Now you do vote.mutate, and I'm using mutate string to get the response. And you see here, the variable string is the color. If I don't pass anything, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's going to complain that it's missing the argument that you need to pass to it. The argument is the ID. And then I'm going to do a then, and I'm going to reload the colors, refetch. And then after that, on finally, I'm going to, because if there's an error, I still unlock you from voting, right? Now, remember to always respect the reactquery, React hooks exhaustive depths. So let's do that. Add the colors and vote dependencies. And I think that should be all. So let's see, it's loading. It's also crazy that like this runs faster on the server, like the queries, than locally. So you see, like as I'm alt tabbing, it's loading, and then if I click on a vote, it gets slightly bigger, you know, and then that's done. So like now I can just do a commit. Let's see, gc -a -m hello. I'll do GPU. And then now, if you give a little bit of time and you go to tRPC rainbow.vercel.app, I'll probably get an email soon telling that has updated. It's going to take a while. Before that, I'm going to show you the best part about this all. Let's say that I'm doing some maintenance on my backend, and I say like, who created this caller thing with hexadecimals? So here on the database, which it's not connected to it. Like I don't want hex. I want hexadecimal caller representation, right? There's no error on this file, but you see rainbow.tsx has an error now, saying that caller is missing something. And that means that the information I'm getting is not working. And you know, like the crazier part would be if I go to my types, I don't remember where I did that, but you can do like the F2, you know, where you can rename a variable, and it will rename everywhere. And yeah, like so people like green. Yeah, and it's just like the vote. And if you go to the backend, it's just like the request for a vote is it returns nothing, and it get, like you see here on the request data, the parameters for the function they all get like parsed for you. So yeah, and if you keep alt tabbing, it's going to update with the colors you are voting right now. And that's not, you know, like all rainbows, let's say. There are some caveats. The documentation for tRPC is for it's not for the faint of the heart, so you have to know about backend, you have to know about TypeScript, imports and things that you might, like the documentation might not be very accurate, and you have to like go around that. But V10 is in active development, and that should be soon released. V9 uses reactquery at 3. V10 is going to use 10 stack reactquery at 4. Here are some references, some very nice videos about tRPC. And yeah, that's it for me, I guess. Thank you.